Hello, I'm Julie Swenson, Managing Director of Forward Theater Company in Madison, Wisconsin.
I'm Mike Fisher, Milwaukee-based theater writer and dramaturg.
And I'm Jenna Poff-Gray, founder and artistic director of Forward Theater Company. And this is Theater Forward, a monthly conversation about theater from a local, regional, and national perspective. From Madison to Manhattan, we're excited to share insights into our own company while exploring issues surrounding theater in the Midwest and around the country. Welcome to episode 135 of Theater Forward.
Great to be here.
In this episode, we offer the second of our 2-episode series on mentorship. As in many fields, a good mentor in the theater can make all the difference to your career and your artistry. Here are our remaining interviews with some amazing artists on the mentors that changed their lives.
Our next guest is DeMonte Henning. DeMonte is an actor, director, and theater arts educator. He received his formal training at UW-Milwaukee with additional training at the Milwaukee Reps Emerging Professional Residency Program. Now, that was just a little over 10 years ago, and DeMonte has consistently worked all over the Midwest. He's seen as an actor in 7 Guitars at Cincinnati Playhouse, Tony Stone at Alliance Theater, Stick Fly at Writers Theater, and really all of the professional companies in Milwaukee, including Cardboard Piano at Renaissance Theater Works, Kill Move Paradise at Next Act, Our Town and Dream Girls at Milwaukee Rep. It just keeps going. He's been at Forward Theater's productions of Learning to Stay, Skeleton Crew, and Clyde's, and we've had the pleasure of working with DeMonte as a director when he co-directed The Niceties. DeMonte is joining us just after completing a successful run as Walter Lee Younger in Milwaukee Chamber Theater's production of A Raisin in the Sun. Welcome, DeMonte.
Wow, thank you. Thank you for that introduction. Thank you so much. It's very, very happy to be here.
We're thrilled to have you here and listen to who you consider a mentor of yours. Who do you have?
Absolutely. I mean, there are 3 people that come to mind, Andre Lee Ellis, Malkia Stampley, and Brent Hazelton. But I'll just mention Andre Lee Ellis because he was the first person that, he knew who I was before I even knew who he was. He met my mom when I was maybe about 5. And I remember my mom meeting with him one day and just saying, my son, he's very creative and artistic, and I don't know, what to do with him. I really don't know. And I'm, because I would just be, all over the house and making noise and banging pots and pans and, hanging up blankets and making a stage and everything. And so he encouraged my mom to put me in some acting classes. And because he realized that I needed an outlet to express my creativity. And so I had no idea who he was. And then it wasn't until I was maybe in my early 20s when I met him randomly at a rally, and my mom introduced me to him, and he was working on a play called Telling It Like It Is, and I auditioned for him, and I got in the show, and ever since then, he has been someone that has really been a strong foundation for me as an artist. As a man, he's an advocate. He believes in the youth in the city of Milwaukee. I have talked to him not just when it comes to my work as an artist and my career, but just as a man in this country, as a father. And he's been somebody that listens, but also challenges me in ways that are incredibly beneficial for me in ways that I didn't even realize I needed in that moment. And so he's always somebody that has poured into me, and we don't talk as often as we did when I was younger, but whenever we do, we pick up like we just talked on the phone yesterday, and it's just he's a remarkable person that I really consider a mentor. He's always encouraged me and pushed me to, hey man, when you gonna go out to New York, and you can do it, and all of these things, and I'm a big person that I I like to listen, especially from to my elders and people who have a lot of wisdom. And he has mentored me in terms of things of what to do and what not to do. And so I appreciate that. And so um, I really am grateful to have him to have Andre Lee Ellis in my life. Yeah.
You know, Demonte, that's splendid, and it's so nice for me to have a connection to somebody who is one of the first people here that I got to review an August Wilson play in terms of him directing it, because he was on that when it wasn't as popular as it's become since. Um,
Mm.
you talked about him encouraging you to expand beyond Milwaukee, and you're somebody that could have a career anywhere in this country if you wanted to. You have chosen to stay here, which is really truly lucky for us in terms of home base. Has he played a role in, or is that something that you've talked to him about in terms of the decision to make this your home base, even though you've got this really truly national career?
Yeah, I think that he was one of the first people to offer me a professional acting gig, and I'll never forget that. In terms of Wisconsin and Milwaukee being my home base, there's a lot of other factors that go into why Wisconsin is my home base, but um, he's somebody that also that believes in me, but also understands what position I'm in as a father. I just bought a house last year, so so
Woo!
although I think you have to have that balance. I think it's important to encourage and to push, but to also meet the person where they are at. And I feel like he does a great job at keeping that balance without allowing me to be complacent and say, well, this is all I'm going to do. This is all that I can, this is all the potential that I have. He still pushes me. He still is, says how proud of, how proud of, how proud of me that he is, but he also manages that fine balance.
That's so beautiful. Uh, do you find yourself thinking of things that you learned from his mentorship while you're working? What are ways that he kind of shows up during your work life?
Absolutely. He would always say to bend your knees.
Yep.
And at the moment, I didn't kind of understood what he meant by that. But I think it's a grounded to be grounded in your work, um, and it just allows you to be flexible. And so when doing a Raising in the Sun, I literally was telling myself like bend your knees, get grounded in the work. So that's something that continues to I continue to revisit.
Andre Lee Ellis has done a tremendous amount of work in Milwaukee,
Mhm.
not just as a theater administrator, organizer, artist, but he's done like his community garden and what
Mhm.
the 500 tuxedos. Is that the name I'm thinking of correctly?
Absolutely. Hmm.
Um, I think there would be a lot of people that probably put him on a list of mentors. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. And I think that's what makes him, to me, such a remarkable person, is that not only as the artist, but just the man that he is. I mean, he has really given a lot of his time, his energy, his resources to make his community a better place. And
Mhm.
I just as a full, multifaceted human being, I think that's something that I am attracted to, of somebody who's not only a good performer on stage, but off stage. How are you as well? And so I think that is something that also that I'm grateful to have experienced with him. I remember there was a time when this just goes to show just how in tune he is with everybody. I remember I was doing a play with him, telling it like it is, and I started crying, but it wasn't because I was emotional or anything. Like, it's kind of funny at the end. It wasn't because I was emotional or anything, but I was frozen and I couldn't blink. And sometimes when you can't blink, you kind of get like a a tear in your eye. And so that's what happened. And so I remember he called me and he was like, I just want to make sure that you're okay. And I saw you were crying during this moment. And I was like, oh, no, no, no. It was just because my eyes were dry and whatever. And I just couldn't blink in that moment. And so I think that just goes to show just how, sincere he is and how in tune he is with other people and how much he cares about other people. And so I just found that funny.
That's great.
I have a question related to Julie's question, DeMonte. So when you think about yourself as an actor in theater, does his way of thinking about the relationship with the arts and community, does that affect the way you want to think of yourself or the things you want to do, leveraging your theater, your theater work so that you can give back in some way that goes beyond just giving to an audience every night?
Absolutely. That's a great question. Absolutely. You know, his work as an advocate has 1000% influenced me. And, um, I have developed a passion for creating opportunities for Black artists. And I know that that's something that he is passionate about. I think seeing the way that he works with the limited amount of resources that he has, but the fact that he is still able to produce the things that he is able to do. Um, the 500 Men tuxedo, like that's a brilliant thing that he is able to orchestrate. It just allows me to see that there are no excuses. You can, if you have a vision, if you have a dream, if you have a goal, you can do it. And I think that has played in an enormous influence in my life, just in terms of creating more space for not just Black artists on stage and Black and brown artists on stage, but behind the scenes. Um, and feeding. There's a big appetite. I won't even say appetite. There's a hunger for Black stories to be told. And I think that a lot of Black audiences are feeling left behind and feeling um, not feeling acknowledged. And so I feel like my work, I feel like there is a certain level of um, a duty that I have to make space for other artists. And I'm going to continue to do that, especially seeing the work that he has done. It's inspiring, it's motivating, and so that's how it's influenced me as an artist and as a man. So
listening to you talk about him, it is such a clear trajectory from what he taught you to what I see you doing in your career and for the next iteration, right, of theater artists and just artists in general. That's the beauty of mentorship. Of
absolutely,
you take something, you give something, and you just keep passing that chain forward, right? I love listening to you describe the impact that he had, because I see you having that impact on others in exactly that same way.
And that's the thing. It's like now I find myself being in a position where I'm mentoring other people, and I feel like that's the natural progression of things. And sometimes I don't even know. Sometimes people will come up to me and they'll say, I was really inspired by what you said, or how can we, I'd love to go out to coffee and talk more with you. And there's a young actor, Ethan Hightower, who I have kind of taken under my wing and mentored him for the past maybe 5 years. We met when he was a junior in high school, and I was like, wow, that's crazy. And now he just graduated from college, and to see his progression as an actor, I'm just like, this is how it should be. I'm inspired by other people, mentored by other people, and now I'm going to pass that on to you. I think mentorship is incredibly important.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautifully said.
And 10 years, we'll have to talk to Ethan about what how he feels about you, DeMonte.
Yeah, there we go. Natural progression.
Exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you. Thank you, friend, for taking the time. It's this series of conversations we're having is turning into such a beautiful chance to talk with artists who we love, but then to hear about the artists they love.
Yeah, I love
And
it. I
it's
love it.
really inspiring.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Our next guest is Elise Edelman, who has probably done more than I can count on one hand with fingers left over the people who have done as much to help me see characters I thought I understood in a completely different and new light. I mean, Elise has acted all over the state, from Spring Green in the South Southwest to up to Door County, and she's played everybody from one of Shakespeare's most amazing heroines in Twelfth Night in a performance that I will never forget, despite the 24 plus productions of that play that I've seen, to playing a mouse in Lily's little plastic purple purse, whatever the hell it's called. And Elise is also, in addition to being an incredible actor, a director who is like, seems to have she's a glutton for punishment. She takes on the toughest plays, has given in the last few years brave and original and just stunning interpretations of really difficult pieces like The Wolves and The Nether and Cardboard Piano. I could go on, but we need to have time for Elise to do what we're here to talk about today, which is a person who helped make her the incredible human and artist that she is. Elise, take it away and talk to us about a mentor who has been important to you.
Oh my goodness. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I've been a fan of this podcast for a very long time.
Thanks.
Also, Mike, can you just walk with me to every new room I go to and
the best hype man.
It was so nice. Awesome. So, okay, when I saw that the topic for this month's podcast was the mentor that changed my life, my first reaction was honestly, which one should I talk about? I've been just like unbelievably fortunate in my life, and I can think of amazing teachers, right, from my childhood who I still talk to. I think of people that I admire in the field who I call when I need advice or perspective, right? Or just someone to help me think through a problem. Jeff Frank is one of those people. He is the artistic director of First Stage when I was growing up. Someone whose example has had tremendous impact on me as a young artist. Molly Rohde is another person, someone I knew when I was younger, now a colleague and one of my dearest friends. There's Ken Washington, who was the program director of the BFA actor training program at University of Minnesota Guthrie Theater, where I trained, who was incredibly influential. There is Roseanne Sheridan, right, who is somebody I've really only gotten to know well in the last few years, former artistic director of Children's Theater of Madison, but who has become an incredibly important source of wisdom and perspective to me in the last couple of years, right? I could keep going. The list is just really that long. But when I think if I'm going to define a mentor as someone who maybe sees something in you before you fully see it in yourself, or like someone who invests in your growth, not because they have to, but because they believe in you, or someone who like shapes not just your professional work, but like your confidence, your understanding of yourself, right? What you're capable of. I think for me, there are two people who I think my life trajectory would look completely different if I had not met them. They've been true mentors like that. And the first, and I promised you all that this is not because I am sitting on a podcast with her, but Jen Gray, right? I promise that if somebody else had called me and asked me this exact same question, Jen Gray would be one of the first names out of my mouth. So right. So I first met Jen, right, I think a little over 10 years ago. When she cast me in Mr. Burns, a post-electric play. It's a little over 10 years ago now, wasn't it? Right? I think since then we've worked on, right, like 5 or 6 full-scale productions together, right? Not including like workshops or readings or work as on the advisory company at Forward. And I think that one of the reasons I was immediately drawn to Jen was because I wanted to be like her. Really, like Jen, you ran and you run rehearsal rooms differently than what I had been used to. I think that maybe unconsciously, I absorbed this idea that rigor in a rehearsal room and kindness existed in like opposition to one another, right? That if you cared really deeply about the work and held yourself and your colleagues to a high standard, that the room had to be hard or intense or even intimidating. And then I worked with Jen, and clearly the leader, right? The person in charge of the room, someone who dug deeply into the material the way that I expect that we are going to work on, in rehearsal. No stone, right, goes unturned in a Jen Gray rehearsal process. But she also was warm and kind. And she expected everyone else in the room to be the same, right? Whew, so our professional relationship, right, eventually grew into a friendship and then into mentorship. And as I started to direct more and more and produce more and more, I found myself over the years asking Jen just a lot of questions. Right, we talk about theater holistically, leadership. We'd talk about careers, how to balance, a life in the industry with our lives, and families outside of it. And there is one moment I remember most clearly. I wonder if you remember this too, Jen. So I was producing Wisconsin Rights a couple of years ago. We were on a break one day, and we took a walk by the lake, and I think we had sushi, and we sat and we had a conversation by the lake. And you, Jen, you started asking me questions about my goals, right? Not in like a networking way. You were like in a genuinely curious way, right? You wanted to know what like I wanted, like where I saw myself, and also just like the kind of artist generally that I wanted to become. And it was one of those like big dreaming conversations, right? The kind where like you leave feeling like your future is suddenly possible. And you made me believe that like actually I was going to do all of those things that I hoped to do. And then like almost casually, Jen said, we could make this mentorship official. And I remember feeling really honored by that. And since then, I think that what has been uh, most meaningful to me about the way that Jen mentors, and Jake Penner and I have talked about this too, who also considers you to be his mentor, is the access that Jen gives into her brain and her heart in like this really raw and unfiltered way. Um, she's spent years, the last several years, talking out loud to me about the challenges, that you face as an artistic director and a leader. Jen has invited me into conversations about season selection and organizational challenges and board decisions and those kinds of artistic questions that she was wrestling with. And in that way, you've given me this window into why you're making the decisions that you're making, and not in this afterwards summary kind of way, right? Not looking back once everything is resolved. In the moment, you include me, and you've let me see like uncertainty. You've let me see doubt, and in many cases, you've turned those questions, that you've been having, that you have, back around to me and ask, what would you do? And I think maybe partly because you were actually interested in my answer, but more so, I think because you have helped me learn how to think through those situations myself, and I think that that's ultimately why your mentorship has meant so much to me. By letting me into those conversations for so many years, I've often felt like, in the current really tough decisions that I've had to make, I've already made those decisions before. So cool that I get to say that to your face right now.
Oh my God.
Yes.
You've wrecked me.
Immortalize it. Beautiful.
And I'll be honest, I didn't say that I was going to be talking about you, because
No, you didn't.
I was worried that you wouldn't let me. Okay, and then the second person, if I may, who I must acknowledge as being a mentor who changed my life, is Susan Fate. And getting emotional, you guys. Wasn't expecting that. And I think that what's really telling about Susan Fate and her mentorship is that I suspect if I was in a room full of women theater artists in Milwaukee, many, right, and they were asked the same question, a huge percent of them would mention Susan Fate as being their mentor or having mentored them. Of course, just to make nod to it, Susan is retiring in a month, after this legendary 33-year career as artistic director of Renaissance Theater Works, and the literal mission of Renaissance. Like the tagline of the organization is supporting women on and off the stage. I know Julie Swenson has said that tagline so many times when she was working at Renaissance. So mentorship, right, has been woven into the fabric of the organization that Susan built. And I think that one of the things that I love most about Susan is that she never tells you what to do. You call her because you have a dilemma, right? You explain the situation. You're hoping that Susan is going to give you the answer. And instead, she starts asking you questions, sometimes like annoyingly difficult questions, but questions that also very slowly reveal what the actual issue is. And before you know it, you've talked yourself into an answer. And then Susan will say, great, sounds good. And then you'll go, no, but what would you do, Susan? And, then she'll usually laugh, because that's not the point, right? The point is that she mentors by helping you develop your own instincts and your own, leadership way, rather than borrowing hers. I've had so many conversations like that with her over the years. And the other thing that I think Susan has done exceptionally well, as Milwaukee's mentor to women theater artists, is finding opportunities for specific people. She has this incredible track record of giving emerging artists opportunities before everyone else sees what they're capable of, or even knowing who they are sometimes. I experienced that firsthand when she asked me to direct The Nether at Renaissance Theater Works, which was a play that was very polarizing, and she knew was going to have polarizing reactions to it when she offered it to me to direct. She had been clearly thinking about me as directing it for a long time, but was waiting the right moment in my career to be able to handle like not just the material and the subject matter, but the conversations around the play that would be happening in the community. I think that Susan, as a mentor, has a remarkable ability to match artists with material, right? To look at a director or an actor and think, this is something that will stretch them. This is the project that will challenge them. This is the thing that they are ready for. Of course, even if they fully don't know it yet, right? She always has had one slot in her 3-show season at Renaissance Theater Works for an emerging director. So mentorship in kickstarting the careers of women theater artists is very much a part of her legacy, and she has certainly given me personally many of those kinds of opportunities since I started working with her. I think even before I did Mr. Burns. So, yeah, goodness, I am just like, I'm so grateful to both Jen and Susan and helping me. And yeah, what you've given me as mentors. I wouldn't be where I am in my career now, and in my life now, without both of you amazing people. So.
Oh, Elise, when we invited you, I was guessing you would talk about Susan, and I'm so glad that you did, because she deserves all of that and more. And thank you for your beautiful words. I remember that conversation by the lake so well. I already adored you, but I was like, oh, there's so much depth here. This artist is going to change the shape of Wisconsin theater during her career, and you're doing it. And very proud of you, and embarrassed. So thank you.
We have been asking people how their mentors have shown up in their present work, but I'll be honest with you, Elise. I mean, you could articulate that, but I think you have how much we see, in your directing or your acting, or just the way you carry yourself as an artist. I do see Jen, and I do see Susan, and I see those influences in what you do.
That is the best compliment I will ever receive. I think in terms of like showing up, in terms of like being the most authentic version of yourself, right? Like that's something that both Jen and Susan have. I'll also say, the way that I direct plays, there are times when I'm speaking to actors and Jen will come out of my mouth. Like the idea of, okay, we're going to start by building the house, right? And then we're going to work, we're going to work fast, or so then we can go back and decide what's inside the house. Like that is word for word a way that Jen, starts a process to explain how we're going to work. Yeah.
To me, and you just sort of said it in terms of these two mentors teaching you to bring your authentic self to the room. One of the ways I see the influence of these two people in your work, and you said it in the way you talked about both of them, is in some ways I don't see the presence of either of them in the way they direct in your work. You are your own amazing self, and it's because these two people both gave you the things that you've talked about, but gave you most of all the courage and the faith to see how much you have that is your very own, and to run with it, and to give space for that to grow. And so, like, maybe there's some structural things around it, but there's Elise and 100% Elise in everything that you do. And so I see three amazing directors, those two and you, and I see three very, very different styles, even though in a Venn diagram kind of sense, I can see the overlaps that you're talking about. And that to me speaks to the essence of what good mentoring is in ways you've articulated so incredibly well.
Thank you. Like, yeah, the idea of like not telling you what to do, but helping you learn how to make a choice for yourself.
Mhm.
The thinking part of it all. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
both Jen and Susan have been really helpful in helping me think. Yeah, it's
Well,
true.
Elise, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for spreading the joy about our colleague Jen
Oh.
and Susan Fate. And yeah, that was really, your words were really beautiful. I know Jen choked up and I did too listening to it. So it was so nice to have you here. Thank you.
You're the best of the best.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
If you have ever had the privilege of working with our next guest, the fabulous Scott wrote, you are lucky. There's no debate about that at all. Scott has been at American Players Theater for decades, currently serving as costume director, where he has mentored scores of other designers and artisans. Scott has designed costumes for nearly all of Wisconsin's professional theaters and has been one of my personal favorite collaborators at Forward, starting from our very first production here, which he designed costumes for. There's more and more. I could go on and on, but instead I will just say, welcome, Scott. And I look forward to hearing about the mentor who helped shape your career.
Well, thank you, Jen. It was a hard choice. I had lots of mentors, but probably the one that stands out the most is Bud Hill, who was a designer at APT he designed over the first 15 seasons, I believe 12 shows in 15 seasons. Um, uh, the first show I worked with Bud directly on was Tartuffe. I was his assistant. And from day one, he took me under his wing and we went fabric shopping for all the costumes. And he trusted me like with the renderings and to go through fabrics with him and make choices. Bud was sort of an amazing person of a specific time, I would say. He went to Yale, graduated in, I believe, 1960, ended up teaching at Yale for a couple of years before he moved to New York, where he designed opera and ballet and theater, and he worked in TV. He designed a movie. He was requested by Joan Crawford to design her costumes for a specific movie. He's uncredited because there was a big name designer who she apparently did not like the costumes that were designed for her, and she had seen something he had designed, and so he got to do that. He worked in so many different facets of theater. He worked in a lot of the Broadway costume shops, building, costumes for Camelot, the original Camelot, and, some of those shows of that era. He worked with fashion designer Charles James for a number of years. And then he also, one of the people that I think helped form him too was that he worked with the man who made all of Ginger Rogers' costumes for the movies. It was always a fascinating thing to work with Bud because while you were learning and you didn't necessarily know you were learning from him, there were also all these amazing stories of the people he worked with and the places he worked and all of that kind of stuff. So and here at APT, he designed so many shows. One season back when APT remounted shows. There was a season when we did 6 shows in rotating rep, and 4 of the 6 shows were shows that he had designed. A pretty amazing designer and a pretty amazing contributor to the early years of APT. So.
He sounds wonderful, Scott. I'll have to look up more of his biography. But what do you think? Bud has what do you reflect of Bud in the work that you do right now?
He taught me how to look at a show as a whole, not just, individual costumes, how to look at color and help tell the story that way, how to really think about character. He was a designer of an era when the renderings, were characters. I mean, like an actor could look at it and go like, and just see the character. Um, things have changed through the years, so that's, unless you're doing a very specific kind of show, a lot of times that's not, something that you see in a rendering anymore. And renderings have so completely changed, because his renderings were absolute works of art. And of course now a lot of renderings are going to digital and that kind of thing. So just a different world right now, but he was just an amazing artist all the way around. So,
well, you're clearly carrying that forward with your gorgeous renderings. It's one of my delights when we work on a show together.
Scott, given the fact that, you said he was a particular designer at a particular time, you've talked about the huge changes in costume design in the last decades. How, as you think about mentoring those who come after you, what he gave you in terms of a style or an approach to fostering your own growth, what of that can still work or still translates as you try and mentor the people coming up behind you?
I think it's the looking at everything as a whole. Here at APT, with our two different stages, it's teaching people how to look at things differently on the two stages, detail differently. On the outdoor stage with, where we seat 1,000 people, the detail has to be a little more heightened, so you can actually see it. Indoors, we can be a little more subtle. So things like that, color, especially again on the outdoor stage with, all of the natural outdoors, just how does color work with that and that kind of thing. So, and the changing light, in the outdoor stage, a show may start in daylight or dusk, and by the time it's over, the moon is rising over the stage. So, just totally different kinds of light throughout one production. So,
did you stay in touch when he wasn't at APT?
Bud and I became very good friends. He had a house here in Spring Green, lived in Chicago, but even once he stopped designing, he was up here every summer. I often visited him in Chicago. And when he passed away, I actually inherited his archives.
Oh, wow.
And I donated them just recently to I'm going to get the name wrong, but the Wisconsin Film and Theater Institute, something research, I think, at the university.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Oh, so you're literally carrying forward his career.
Yep, absolutely. And it was amazing. It was fascinating going through all of his. I mean, the number of resumes that he had throughout the years, just seeing different things. Very interesting. And then I kept out a few things just for myself, but it was like trying to decide, what would go to them, and obviously eventually probably will join the things too. So.
Yeah, that's great.
Hey, Scott, this is a version of the question I already asked you, but another of the things that has changed tremendously from, say, 1960 to now is just how theater functions. It's not as top-down or hierarchical as it might have been in terms of how the approach works. How does that change the way in which the mentoring lessons that you received from him are things that you pass on to others? I mean, is the style something that you've had to change because the era is different than when the one you came up in?
I don't necessarily know that it is that the mentoring is that different. What I try to do here as costume director is, often I'm matching up a designer and an assistant who maybe have never met. Maybe one of them has worked here at APT before, or, that kind of thing. And so I try and figure out personality-wise, how to match people up. And it might be that, here's an assistant who I see great potential in, and pair them up with this designer who can, start that mentoring process here at APT. Sometimes it's designers bring their own assistants, and the designer may have been, their teacher in college or something like that too. So there's already a mentorship started there. But I just think I think that the mentorship itself is pretty much the same. It's, just sort of the world around it has changed it a little bit, and just sort of how we deal with it. So.
Right. You're a mentoring matchmaker, or a mentorienta, if you will.
There's one thing I just want to make sure before we finish, that is only marginally related to mentoring, but it has everything to do with mentoring, because everybody who is carried it forward to you to carry forward to others is included in what I'm about to say. But congratulations on the Regional Tony Award. I mean, all of you have made that happen. Those of us who have been privileged enough to see your work and the work of all of the amazing artists that you've worked with, going all the way back and now moving forward into the future. It just feels right and special and so deserved. And I'm sure you're proud. I know anybody living in Wisconsin that's seen your work is proud of it.
Yeah, it was a huge announcement here. It was, we're sort of over the moon, and so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it really is, though. It's exactly what you're saying, Mike. It's an award for the breadth of APT, and not just the last 3 shows. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's the whole, from beginning to end, or beginning to now, I should say. And certainly you were a big part of that, Scott. And so was your mentor, it sounds like.
Yeah,
so congratulations to you both.
Well, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just beautiful. It's wonderful to hear about his influence. And I love the idea of you having that archive to sort of sort through and learn even more about his career. But the way in which you are literally paying it forward every season out in Spring Green it's inspiring. It's inspiring, friends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we're still using some of the costumes that Bud designed, 30 years ago. So
love it.
Amazing.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's perfect. Thank you for joining us to tell us that story.
Absolutely. Thank you.
That's all for this episode of Theater Forward, a conversation about theater in Wisconsin, the Midwest, and America. Thank you for joining us. I'm Jenna Poff-Gray.
And I'm Julie Swenson. And I want to thank our guests today for sharing their incredible stories about their mentors.
And I'm Mike Fisher. Our podcast is produced by Scott Hayden, who makes these stories possible and allows us to carry it forward. You can find us and listen to these stories at Theater Forward. Theater, as always, spelled with an ER. If we leave you with nothing else, that's our mentoring tip for the day.
And if you enjoy this podcast, don't forget to subscribe to us and leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you.
We're grateful to have you listening, and we will be back soon for another Theater Forward conversation.